Yo, welcome back to the channel. We're gonna start assembly on our small block 350 here for our 85C10 project. Got a sweet cam to put in, whole bunch of other parts. Let's check it out. We tore everything off the motor, but left the rotating assembly in place, so crank and pistons already in. So we're gonna get right to throwing the cam in. Let's quick check out what we got. It's a Comp XE268. They say this is about the biggest cam you can go on a stock converter, but in the old Turbo 400 over there, we got a B&M Torque Master, good for about 2,500 stall. Here's the cam card. It's a 224 intake and a 231 exhaust duration, 477 intake lift and a 480 exhaust lift. On a 110 LSA, got lifters to go with it. Also got a new double roller timing set over here. Matching valve springs, retainers, keepers, valve seals. Already got the heads cleaned up, ready to go. Got all the parts cleaned up, ready to go, including the block. But let's get to throwing that cam in there. I already cleaned it, and I got a coating of assembly grease on here. Just take it in nice and slow. All right, now that I'm at that point, get the rest of this greased up, and we'll send her home the rest of the way. Here's where it'll get interesting, losing all my leverage. Cam's in there looking good. We're gonna get our timing set on next, starting with the crank gear onto the keyway, send her home. This is actually an alignment tool for an LS timing cover. It works pretty good. Turn the motor over, get the timing dots lined up. So if you can see it, there's a circle on that tooth right there. So we're gonna get that guy right at the 12 o'clock position, just like that. Now we're ready for our cam gear. It's marked front, and on the camshaft here, there's a dowel pin that lines up with the gear right here. Here's your other timing dot. You want that pointed 6 o'clock, matching that one. Snug a couple of these bolts down just to make sure that we're good. And that looks perfect. Gonna grab some thread locker, take these bolts back out and put some red Loctite on there. And let's get those torqued 20 foot-pounds. Ready to install our timing cover now, but before we do that, need to punch the new crank seal in there and then use my little tool again to hammer it in. We're gonna do a little bit of RTV down here at the bottom where it meets the block. Put our gasket on, dry. Timing cover going on. Good. Get a bolt started. Put on our timing indicator before we forget about it. Got them all snug. Torque them down to 6 foot-pounds. Moving right along, timing cover's on. Flip the engine around and we'll go ahead and do the oil pan. I already prepped all these surfaces for gaskets the other day. Just some oil to clean up quick. I got some alcohol and a rag just to make sure it's all clean. Now we're going to use some RTV again in the corners. So up here, again, where the timing cover and the block meet. And back here, it's not really, we'll call it a corner, but right here where the rear main seal housing is, just a bead. That'll work. Get our new gasket, coming in hot. What do we get? We get new hardware? Sweet. That ain't right. Well, that's about worthless. All right, let me get all that RTV off of there before it sets. Whoops. Guess I should have done a dry fit first, huh? Idiot. Well, that was a little bit of a hiccup, but I got the motor turned back around. We'll go ahead and pop the heads on next, I suppose. Got nothing else better to do. Set the gasket on there. Got this cylinder head in place, and we got some ARP head bolts, along with some sealer, because all the head bolts go into a water jacket. Got that one coated with sealer. Let's get it started right in the middle. I got all these started by hand and snugged down. Now there's a torque spec, 65 foot-pounds, but we're gonna work our way up to that in 3 increments, so we'll do, I don't know, 20, 40, 65 foot-pounds. There's also a torque pattern, and like most heads that you come across, you're just gonna start in the middle, do a cinnamon roll all the way out. We'll start right here, 20 foot-pounds. Let's take her up to 40. And up to our final torque spec, 65 foot-pounds. Right there. Good on this side. Check it out. Got the head on the passenger side here. Here's your 3 different bolts. You got your small, short ones. They all go on the bottom. You got your long ones. They go all these spots in the middle. And then these medium ones, there's one on each end. One here, and one there. That's it. So, same thing over here. I'm gonna coat all the threads. Thread sealer, torque it down, do the torque pattern, and the heads will be installed. Got our new gasket in, and I was planning on finishing this up tonight, but evidently not, because it came damaged. So not gonna be using that. I guess we could at least see if it fits. Spin that around. There you go. So that does appear to be the right one. Looks like it fits pretty good, but we'll just have to get another one of these on the way, and then we'll have to finish it up later. Again. Summit's got a new pan gasket on the way for me. Since they don't want this one back, I'm gonna put it on here. That way I can at least get the oil pan on and bolt it down to paint, and then we'll take it back off. Like that, that'll be good enough to paint it. One last thing to do to keep ourselves occupied before paint is swap out the valve springs. These are already done. We did those last night. So now we're gonna go ahead and do this side. Ready? This hose just threads into the spark plug hole, and you add compressed air. What that's gonna do is keep the combustion chamber full of compressed air. That way the valve doesn't fall in, and we can get to our keepers like that. So we're gonna jump right into it. All right, ready? We'll push it down. You get the keepers out. Got both. Get the old valve seal off of there with a pick tool. Got a new valve seal lubed up. Just gonna slide it on. Okay. There's one. Well, I just realized I was doing those O-rings wrong on the last one, because when I compressed it, the O-ring just pushed right out of the spot. And then I looked at all of them, and half of them were wiped off anyway. So I guess I should have been compressing the spring, then putting the O-ring in, then the keepers, then letting it all go. So I'll fix that later. Whatever, we're learning. Do it right or do it twice, right? Besides that minor flaw, we're ready for paint. But I'll pick this video back up after the engine's painted. We'll finish assembling, get lifters in there, push rods, all that. The motor is back from paint. It's looking sweet. If you want to see more on that, check out last week's episode. Now, I didn't realize, but the Felpro kit actually came with valve seals. So we're gonna pull off the valve covers first, fix that issue real quick. Ready? So here's where we kind of went wrong last time. I was taking out the old O-ring and then just putting on the new one right away. I should have been doing it this way. Keep the seal off, put the new valve spring and retainer back on, compress the spring, and then get the new valve seal on there. Just like that. Yeah. So now we'll finish the rest of these and do them the right way. Our new oil pan gasket did come in, so I got the motor flipped around. That way we can do that quick, and then we'll be completely done on the bottom side. Get this wiped off and clean one more time. All right, we'll try again. Some RTV here in the corners. Pop this new gasket on here. Cool. They're all snug, hand tight. Now we'll torque them to spec, 12 foot-pounds. And we're gonna start in the middle, do a spiral all the way out. And that's that. We're done on the bottom. Gonna spin the motor around for good this time. The thing to do next is install the balancer. So I'm gonna get it on there as much as I can by hand. So like that much. Then I got a tool here, and that's just gonna thread into the crankshaft. 5/8 to hold it, 1 1/4, tighten it on there. Yep. There we go. Got her flipped right side up. Next thing to do is lifters, push rods, and rockers. So they are clean and dry now. We got the Comp lifters that came with the cam, a set of Howard cams, push rods in standard 7.8 inch length. The process here is more assembly lube on the face of the lifter where it meets the cam. And then right before I put the lifter down into the lifter bore, I'm gonna coat it with oil on the sides, coat it up real good. Something like that. Assembly grease on the face and oil, and it should just slide nicely. Perfect. Get the rest of these done. A little bit of assembly lube on the face. Get the side oiled up. Drop it in. That easy. Bro, that literally sounds like a freaking explosion. Holy shit. Dude, I knew you were gonna call. Yeah, what was that? Sound like an explosion. Push rods next, and we're just gonna throw a little bit of oil on the end. Now, real quick, before I do all the push rods, I'm gonna verify that stock length push rods are gonna work. And we'll do that by making a little mark on the valve tip, like that. Now I'm gonna install 2 rocker arms, adjust the valves, and then set preload. Then I'm gonna roll the motor over a couple times, and then when we take off the rocker arms, whatever of the permanent marker wipes away will give us our answer. It's looking like stock push rods are gonna work just fine. As you can see, the mark, or maybe as you can see, the mark is right in the middle, which is exactly what we want. Gonna go ahead and put the rest of the push rods in and all the rockers. Got all the push rods and rockers on, and I went ahead and set them to 0 lash for the first time around. I'm gonna turn the motor over, quarter turn, just like that. We'll go through all these again. That one's still tight. This one got loose, bring it back to 0 lash. So no more up and down. Then just turn a little bit to get a little bit of resistance on the push rod. That one's tight, 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 loose. So lash is simply the distance between the rocker tip and the valve tip. So 0 lash is having them just touch each other. So when there's no more up and down movement, they're just about to touch, and then with a little bit of resistance on the push rod, you know we're there. Round 3, another quarter turn. So we're gonna do a quarter turn 8 times essentially. That way the crank does 2 whole revolutions and the cam does 4 whole revolutions. Just keep quarter turn at a time, doing the same thing, bringing them to 0 lash. Got all the rotations done and everything is looking good. The last thing to do is come around and add our lifter preload. So that's just gonna be a 3/4 turn on every single one of these, and we'll be done. No more rotating the engine. And we are done. Valves are adjusted. Now, just to make sure everything's okay, I'm gonna bring cylinder 1 top dead center, make sure the balancer mark lines up with the cover. So right now it looks like the exhaust valve, this one right here, is open. So next, that intake valve is gonna open up right there. And then once both of them close, that means we're coming up on compression. So now we'll wait for our balancer line to come around. There it is. Then we'll go to 0 on the mark right there. If we take a peek inside the spark plug hole, kind of hard to see, but the piston is indeed right there at the top. Looking good. Now we're ready for our intake manifold, and I got this sweet wind unit right here. Everything's black. Looking good. ARP hardware, but before I do that, I'm gonna dump some oil in here. Some of our break-in oil. We're gonna need 5 quarts. So I'm gonna put 3 of the 5 straight down here into the lifter valley, and then when everything's assembled, I'll put 1 quart on this side, 1 quart on that side. But before I do that, I'm gonna take one of our oil filters, fill it with oil. That way, when we prime it, we'll have oil pressure right away. Man, that filter about took that whole quart. Anyway, pre-filled. Get her on there. Now approximately 3 quarts of this break-in oil. Put some right down the distributor hole. Make sure that timing cover gets oil up there. Ready for the intake manifold. Grab the gaskets right here. So to get the gasket to hold itself up like that, I do a little dab of RTV right here, right there. Just squish this thing on here, lining up the bolt holes. Put some RTV on each of the china walls here. We are straight up laying down some dimes here with RTV. See if I can replicate the front. Got a piece of masking tape on here. Try and protect the finish. Make a nice crisp line. This is about the coolest thing I ever bought. Permatex Ultra Black. Goes in a caulk gun. Works pretty sweet. All right, let's plop this intake manifold on here carefully with one hand. Steady, and we're there. Looks good. Got our hardware, got it coated with the ARP schmutz. We'll get these hand tight, and just like everything else, there's a torque pattern and a torque spec. I'm gonna be able to get my torque wrench on most of these, except for these 2. What I did is kind of just felt what these felt like and applied it over here. The torque pattern's a little bit different. It's not just a big old cinnamon roll. I'll throw it up on the screen if you're interested. 30 foot-pounds. I'm transferring some stuff from the old intake manifold. I'm gonna have to get a new plug for this one. Oh, this one. That thing is not coming out. I've got the heater hose fitting there, and then the vacuum fitting for the transmission. And I knew I'd forget this. I told myself not to, but that didn't work. But this bracket shares one of the mounting bolts, throttle cable bracket. So I'm gonna have to pull that back off. Thermostat in there. See how this works. One of these fancy reusable ones. Water neck. Hardware, we'll take them to 25 foot-pounds. Intake manifold's pretty much wrapped up. Now we'll go ahead and get the rest of the black accessories on. That's looking a little more gray than black, but oh well. Got my powder coated parts, water pump, fuel pump. Got all the front accessories on. Looking sweet, black and orange. Now, for the plug on the intake manifold, I got to thinking, why wouldn't it come with one? And sure enough, it did. It was in the bottom of the box. So got that plugged off. I got the motor mount brackets on. Gonna come around to this side. We gotta get the oil dipstick in, fuel pump, and then we'll start doing spark plugs. I got the motor tilted on its side. Hopefully that'll help us out a little bit, getting that fuel pump in there. There's a push rod in here, and hopefully the cam isn't all the way down right now. We'll see if we can get it in a little bit. I'm gonna put a little bit of assembly grease on the push rod. Also gonna put some here where it contacts the fuel pump. Might need to turn the motor over to get that push rod in there farther. That's gonna be good, right where it's at. We got the gasket, got some bolts, and we'll torque it 30 foot-pounds. I hope that's not gonna be an issue on the frame rail, but it looks like you might be able to turn this by taking these screws out. I'm gonna throw the spark plugs in next. I checked all the gap on these, 45 thousandths. They're looking good. Dipstick is in. I RTV'd it here at the base and then just got it holding there for now until we get the valve covers on. We're gonna prime the engine, get oil up to the rockers. So I made this by taking apart my old distributor. Cut the gear off the end here and then put the sleeve back on. We'll fill it up with the rest of the oil right through the distributor hole. We'll drop this in. Now we're gonna lock her down so she don't go anywhere. Hook up the drill and spin it. Almost started spinning, but I'm glad I remembered. I need to hook up my oil pressure gauge. Let's hit it, see what happens. We got oil up to all the rockers, good oil pressure, so I'll call it primed. All right, I'm gonna stick the valve covers on. Evidently these little pressure things don't fit on the top. They do fit on the bottom. I don't think that's gonna be an issue. Now for this side, I'm gonna have to figure out how to get that mounted up. All right, looks good. That's gonna have to be sort of kind of temporary because when we get the header on here, it's not gonna work. We gotta unbolt this and figure something else out, but we'll cross that bridge when we get there. Now that the engine's primed up, we'd be able to drop the distributor in, but I think I'm gonna save that for the next video, get initial timing set, get the cam broken in when it's installed in the truck. That'll all kind of go together a lot better. Made good progress though. I did end up turning the fuel pump here. It was pretty easy. Just take out these screws and turn it to where you need it. And then I got all the belts on here. Looking good. Now I don't want to leave you hanging though. I want to get it mocked up so you get an idea what it's going to look like in the truck. So let me throw the carb on here and the air cleaner. There it is with the carb and air cleaner on there. Looking sweet. Can't wait to see what this is going to look like in the truck, which I'm going to start working on right now, but that'll be next week's episode. So hope you enjoyed this video. Take it easy and I'll see you in the next one.